Each and every one of us is on the front lines of climate change, a global threat even greater than the pandemic. Watch this next session to equip yourself with the data and insights you need to join the battle.
Hello and welcome to Game On for Climate Action, brought to you by the United Nations Foundation. I'm your host, Rajesh Mirchandani, and this is the show that connects people across countries, communities, and sectors with the information and facts they need to be climate smart consumers and to hold our leaders to account and demand greater climate action. The game is on because this is a race we can't lose, but we can all win together. We're coming to you virtually because of the pandemic, and as a result of being virtual, we're actually able to connect 4 different parts of the world across many, many time zones, from Doha to Brisbane to both coasts of the United States, with our truly global panel. So let's not waste any time. Let's meet them right away. Panelists, because you're not in a room with an audience. When I do introduce you, let's give a little wave and maybe a little quick hello to anyone who's watching. Let's start off saying hello to Pita Taufatofua, who is a Tongan athlete who has competed in the Olympics, in taekwondo, also in cross-country skiing, and he's training to take part next time around in the sprint kayak, hoping to become the first person to compete in 3 different Olympic sports. Peter's also a UNICEF Pacific ambassador, and he's joining us from Brisbane in Australia, where he is in training. Peter, it's great to see you. I know it's horrendously early where you are, so thank you so much for getting the caffeine on for us.
Thank you for having me, and hi and welcome to everybody out there. I'm super excited to be here. Such an important cause. So it's thank you for having me, despite it being 5 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, you just had to remind us then. Okay, let's say hi to Lucy Biggs from Now This Media. She's their sustainability correspondent and the producer and host of the series One Small Step. It highlights environmental issues and the steps each of us can take to live more sustainably. Lucy, great to see you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be part of this panel and to be included today.
Eva Jones from the UN Foundation's Girl Up campaign that teaches leadership skills to adolescent girls across the world. Eva's joining us from a home in Oregon in the United States, which you may have seen in the news recently because of unprecedented wildfires taking a huge toll there. Eva, we're so glad that firstly you seem to be okay. We hope you're doing okay, and we're really glad that you were able to join us.
Hi, thank you so much. Very excited to be here. Glad that we can do this inside. It's hard to breathe out there.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us. As I said, air quality is something we're going to be talking about in a few minutes, so we're really looking to your experiences of that just now. Dustin Liu is the newly appointed youth observer to the UN by our affiliate organization, the United Nations Association for the USA. Dustin has recently completed a listening tour with young people across the US where they discussed their climate concerns and climate actions. Really interested to hear what they had to say to you, Dustin.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's taking care and staying safe. Really excited to be here.
Great. And finally, but certainly not least, joining us from Doha, Neeshad Shafi is the co-founder of CAR's Arab Youth Climate Movement and the UN Foundation plus SocialGood Connector. That's a global network of activists, advocates, and entrepreneurs committed to the Sustainable Development Goals. Neeshad was named among the 100 most influential people in climate policy by Apolitical. Yeah, eyebrows raised, Lucy, absolutely. Neeshad, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Rajesh. Great to be here. Great to have all of you from all across the globe. And thank you. Looking forward to hearing from all of you.
So let's be honest, the truly global nature of this panel may be the only good thing about lockdown. But with many of us at home and unable to travel, we may have been able to get out into nature a little more around where we live. The air may seem cleaner. Animals may once again be roaming city streets unimpeded by cars, but let's not fool ourselves. Greenhouse gas levels are at their highest concentrations ever. And the latest biodiversity report that just came out said that biodiversity is declining at an unprecedented rate, and the pressures driving that decline are getting worse. Around the world, surveys show that climate change remains one of the top issues of global concerns for people everywhere. We all need to be more committed than ever to protect the places we love, to make change in our own lives, and to demand that our leaders work together better to listen to the science, pay attention to the data, and to implement the goals of the Paris Agreement at the very least. Each and every one of us is on the front lines of climate change in our own way, and it's a global threat even greater than the current COVID-19 pandemic. So today, panelists, we're really looking forward to hearing about your work and your experiences. We hope that you'll both inspire and challenge us. And at the same time, because this is called Game On for Climate Action, and we do have a bona fide Olympian athlete with us, we're going to also challenge and inspire you. But don't worry, no one loses today, because we can all win the climate race together. You'll see how we go. It's easy. So first up, let's speak with Pita Taufatofua and Lucy Biggers. You're up to the plate, guys. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask you a question that's going to kind of like test a bit of your knowledge. Again, there's no prizes. It doesn't matter if you get it wrong. You can guess. It's okay. But that's going to help us kick off our discussion. And then we're going to invite other people in as well. And that's how we'll go throughout the session. So it's this, basically. Climate impacts felt in every sphere of our lives. One of the most obvious ways we might notice them is air pollution. So the question is this, and you should be able to see it now, all on your screens. The question is, what percentage of the world's population lives in places where air pollution exceeds World Health Organization healthy limits? That question again, what percentage of the world's population lives in places where air pollution exceeds WHO healthy limits? Is it 30%, 60%, or 90%? So Lucy, Peter, what are your answers? What do you think?
I think 60%.
Intuitively, I'm thinking 60%. But the way you asked the question, I'm kind of leaning towards 90% at the moment. So I'm not sure.
Well, they say it's all in the performance, right? So Lucy said 60. Well, hang on. What is that your actual answer then, Peter? You can't just say you don't know between the two. Pick one.
Let me go with 60.
Okay, so you both said 60. You're both wrong, I'm afraid. It's 90%.
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
9 people out of 10. Yeah, exactly. 9 people out of 10 in the world live in places where air pollution exceeds WHO healthy limits, which is shocking, right? Listen, Peter, as an athlete, how much do you notice air pollution? What effect does it have on your training?
I mean, first of all, the answer to that really shocks me. I mean, I guess I'm kind of blessed in that where I live, you know, I kind of put myself in areas which are cleaner and greener. So, but to think that 90% of the world is not breathing clean air, that's just, messes with my head a little bit. So I guess I have two quick stories. When I tried to qualify for the Winter Olympics, I missed 5 races because they just weren't getting snow over in these European countries. And so obviously that's a climate thing. And then even as early as this year, as I'm preparing for the kayak Olympic qualification race, we were having, I'm not sure if people remember, there were wildfires happening in Australia, and it just never reached that magnitude ever before. So I'm coming at you from Australia. This is where I do my training camp. And we would have to do a lot of our training for about 2 weeks, actually indoors in air-conditioned or air-filtered areas, because we just couldn't get out on the river. The smog was so thick, it was blackening out the sun. And these fires were 200-300 kilometers away from where we were. And are said to have been sparked by too much heat and climate change and that sort of thing. But it affects us. All we do as an athlete is breathe heavy, pretty much. And to have the air where I am somewhere generally clean, full of smog. I mean, I feel for the other 90% of the planet who are in cities and areas where it's even worse.
Yeah. So Lucy, in your work as a journalist and your interactions with global audiences, do you think that people are starting to understand this fundamental link between climate change and health through issues like air pollution, or what's it going to take? I mean, how much more is it going to take for people to get that link?
I think that more people are really waking up to the reality of climate change every single day. And unfortunately, very extreme events like forest fires that we're seeing now, we're seeing extreme flooding and hurricanes in south of the US right now. These events are so visual, they're so extreme that I think a lot of people who maybe have been in denial are now waking up to it. And I've been working in climate change coverage since 2016. And I really felt like it was on the fringe, like it was like mainstream narratives, and then like, oh, climate change is over here. And I was kind of like a weirdo. And now I think that that's completely changed because it's just impossible to ignore now. It's not really in our future, it's our present. And so I think that more and more people every day are making the connections. And I think we're seeing this fundamental shift that people are so sad for like what we've done for our planet, and they really, really care. I think that doesn't make the problems any less severe, but I will say a silver lining is it's good to see that people all of a sudden are caring, because I think a few years ago people didn't even care, and they just weren't acknowledging that it was true. So I think that the connections are happening more and more every day. It's very overwhelming to take in. It's an existential threat to all of us, and so now it's really about connecting those dots and having that translate into policy that really can create change. Because I think right now a lot of people are looking around and they're going, oh gosh, like we're ruining our planet, and then they don't really know what to do. So that's what we try to do with my series, is help people get, tap into how they can help. And it's, it's sometimes really hard to turn that fear and panic into action, but I think we're seeing more and more of it every day.
Yeah, and talking about politics being, all politics is local, they say. Let's bring in Eva Jones, who's joining us from Oregon, which is a beautiful US state, but one that is currently experiencing dreadful fires. And Eva, as the climate heats up, we know that wildfires become more frequent and more ferocious. Firstly, how are you guys doing? What is the air quality like where you are? I mean, hopefully you're safe, but what's the air quality like, and what has the impact been on you, your friends, your family, your community of the fires?
Thanks. I'm actually really lucky because I don't have any fires near my house, but I do live in the Columbia Gorge, and our air quality is about 500 which is unprecedented levels of smoke. We can't go outside. I have friends whose like college roommates' houses burned down, and so I've been donating a lot of clothes that I was able to clean out during quarantine, which is good, but it's pretty crazy how vast the effect has been all over Oregon. And I can relate a little bit to Pita because I'm not an Olympic athlete, but I did play 3 sports in high school, and wildfires, it's not just one, this is not the first year that Oregon has had wildfires. It's kind of a season now, and it actually coincides with our cross-country running season. And so I know that I can totally feel as an athlete those firsthand effects, whether that's like on the mountain skiing, I'm finding glaciers receding as well. Or, when the Eagle Creek fire burned like 20 miles away from my house, we were running laps inside of the high school. And so it really feels, as an athlete, to have, I know you feel your body and you feel really connected to your body. And I think that's when the effects of climate change can be very visceral. But right now in Oregon, you don't need to be, it's viscerally outside your window. It's, you walk outside for 5 minutes and you come back and like have to change all your clothes because you smell like smoke. It's really horrific.
But, you talked about fire season. I used to live in California, and there they have a fire season, but I didn't know that it's now further north in Oregon as well, as temperatures are warming and fires are becoming more ferocious. Eva, stay with us for the next question. And we're also going to bring in Dustin Liu here. And this question is about biodiversity and nature-based solutions. And what I mean by that, when I say nature-based solutions, I'm talking about things like restoring ecosystems, farming sustainably, preserving living shorelines as well. And we know that these things are vital to halt drastic global warming for many reasons. Most importantly, by helping to absorb and reduce carbon emissions. So my question for you is this, and you should be able to see it on your screen as well now. What percentage of carbon emissions can healthy land and ocean ecosystems absorb? Is it 25%, 40%, or 60%? That question again, what percentage of carbon emissions can healthy land and ocean ecosystems absorb? And this is for Eva and Dustin, but panelists, if any of you want to jump in, our last panelist got the question wrong, so I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in. I'm only teasing. I want it wrong too.
Follow.
But yeah, Eva and Dustin, this is for you. What do you think? 25, 40, or 60%?
I'm gonna have to say 60 because I know that ocean algae is like really powerful.
Awesome. I in order to make sure that we hopefully get it right, I'm going to choose a different answer to cover our bases. I'm going to go with 40%.
Any other panelists want to choose the other? No, I'm joking. So, okay, Dustin, you said 40%, but you said 60%. Eva, you are right. 60% is the right answer. Yeah, let's give her a round of applause. Haven't quite, we're not in front of an audience. I haven't quite got the sound effects, but crowd goes wild, etc., etc. 60%, healthy land and ocean ecosystems can absorb up to 60% of our carbon emissions, which tells us, if we ever needed to be told, why we need to protect the wild places of the world and our natural places, not least because indigenous peoples have been doing that for thousands and thousands of years, but they are vital to us reaching our climate goals. Dustin, you've been on a virtual listening tour of all 50 US states recently, virtually, as you take up your role as the youth observer to the UN, talking especially to young Americans. What are you hearing from them? People like Eva, in fact, about how people are tackling the climate crisis locally and what they're doing in terms of local action.
Yeah, Rajesh, thanks so much for that question. And I think it's really satisfying to know that young people throughout the US are keeping climate change top of mind. And I heard this not only through my listening tour, but also the UN 75 consultations carried out by UNA USA members. I hear young people creating accessible resources in different languages to raise awareness about climate change, to integrate these conversations into their formal classroom settings, to activating others to play a role in the climate change movement. I think what's been really interesting is to understand that we all have gifts that connect to this moment. And this panel is very apt because we truly all need to be game on. And that's a really satisfying takeaway that we've been having with young people. The fact that we understand that this is such a complex issue that we need every single person on board in order to solve it. And I think young people are very aware of the consequences if we do not act. I asked young people, why are you involved in climate change? And young people respond, well, what if we don't? They understand that, if trends in climate change continue, we will experience growing inequalities, personal health risks, further environmental damage. And going back to what Lucy said, what we're experiencing in this moment is that these realities are very self-evident, right? We talked to friends in Jackson County, Oregon, that have said that climate change is not difficult to understand when you see entire communities burning down. It's we think that it's too complicated for young people to understand, but young people are being impacted by climate change every day. And I'll share that what's been so powerful is hearing that young people understand their personal influence. They understand that they have power and influence with their peers to change behaviors and mindsets. And it's just absolutely, it's inspiring to understand how individual actions truly add up to the change we hope to see. So young people, I'm just so pleased to report climate change is top of mind, and they understand that their individual actions are adding up to a larger movement.
Eva,
I may jump in on that really quick. Oh, sorry. I not only live in Oregon, but I live in rural Oregon, which is often, pushed aside as more conservative. But even my friends who are definitely, or classmates who are more right-leaning, I can tell you that when you, like you're saying, when you see wildfires, when you see, salmon populations dwindling, it takes the partisanship out of the issue. And I think that people, no matter their political leaning, more so in my generation than any others, are starting to be yeah, climate change, it's non-negotiable. It's got to be on there.
Neeshad, I'd love to bring you in here. actually. You founded Qatar's Youth Climate and Environment Association. What are young Qataris doing and saying to take action themselves?
Well, it was in that case back in 2015 when I co-founded the Arab Youth Climate Movement Qatar, because I felt the necessity of having a platform for young people to voice. Back then, when I came freshly from the COP21 from Paris, there wasn't any scene for young people to join that sort of advocacy level. Though, I mean, we don't have an issue with myth about climate change. Everybody believes in. But something that I felt back in 2015 and 16, that people don't take it personalized. If you ask somebody, do you believe in climate change? They say, of course we do. So how do you feel that? Yeah, I feel that because there is forest fires in California, there is flooding in Bangladesh, forgetting their own countries sinking every year based on the sea level rise. So there was something that is not personalized and locally studied. And that was something Arab Youth Climate Movement was trying to emphasize on, that there are issues happening in our ecosystem too. Desertification is going higher than it was to be, and heat wave is very frequent. We don't see it, we don't feel it, because we don't work outside like other migrant workers who do on a full-time, because of a lot of constructions happening in Qatar. As you know, Qatar will be hosting the World Cup, FIFA World Cup 2022 in the coming year. So they are the people who feel the brunt, unlike me, who will be sitting in an AC, wouldn't. So people say, hey, it's been always a hot country. How do you see heat waves happening? But the temperature is rising drastically like anywhere else. And also it's been studied that the Middle East would be inhabitable in the coming 10, 20 years. And this is the things that is not projected in most of the conversations in the Middle East, while they discuss from always about the global climate change, not talking from the local perspective. That is what Arab Youth Climate Movement is, and always trying to emphasize with young people that you need to see around your own ecosystem, even if it's desert. You have to have an idea that it's going to be inhabitable if it's not taken care of.
Lucy and Peter, I'd love to get your guys' perspectives on this. Lucy, I mean, you have a show, One Small Step, offering tips for individual action. I'm imagining you're probably getting flooded by tips from young people watching these days as well. They're so keen to take action.
Yeah, I think that this is something that young people have really taken up. We see with activism, and they're really leading the huge marches that we're seeing across the world. And I think everybody wants to see just a fundamental change in the way that our governments run, the way that our economies run, and they want the health of our planet to be at the front of that. And I think seeing so many young people, they have a lot to lose because they're going to be impacted the most. And also they have nothing to lose in the sense of that they're not, invested in the system yet. So they're able to really criticize it from a place of like sort of this innocence of young people. So I think that that's amazing. And I think with my followers, I always am seeing people are very passionate about composting, lowering their plastic consumption, and lowering their own carbon footprint, but then at the same time understanding that there's a limitation and a ceiling of how much just one person can do. And that's when the organizing comes in, and the marches, and getting this to be a topic that politicians can't look away from. And again, this is I think that the activism of the last few years has been so successful because we're talking about this nonstop, and maybe it's a confluence of events because, like we said, we're having more climate change. We don't know necessarily people in office for climate change, but it just seems like we're at this moment where more people are talking about it and taking it seriously across the world, which I think is good. We're moving those small steps into like that big change.
Peter,
I would just love to add something on some Lucy mentioned on the small step. We recently started a project called Measure Your Carbon Footprint here in Qatar in support of UNESCO and Ministry of Education, which would be a program affiliated to all the schools post-pandemic because the schools are shut down here. This was actually really signed in February before the lockdown hit our country. And like Lucy mentioned, we want to create that sort of mindset within the young people that would translate into much bigger action.
Peter, I want to get a perspective from you here. A couple of people have touched on things that I think are relevant to your experience. Neeshad talked about the Middle East becoming uninhabitable because of rising temperatures. Island nations like Tonga are facing the potential of becoming uninhabitable because of rising sea levels as well. And then someone else talked about the limits of individual action, but then there's also the limits of what smaller nations can do unless bigger nations get involved as well. I'm not looking to kind of pin international politics on you here, but I'm just wondering, have you seen that change yourself in the years that you were growing up in Tonga? And how is it affecting? Well, they're not, and also thinking in mind, in August, the world marked Indigenous Peoples Day, and Indigenous peoples have been protecting vast amounts of our planet for thousands of years, but that knowledge is slipping away as those areas go unprotected. So just give us your perspective on those points.
Thank you for the question. I've always been interested in understanding human behavior, what makes us actually do things. And there's two elements to it. So as I grew up, we have a little shack basically that sits on the water in Tonga, and each year we could actually see the sea level rise. In about 2 or 3 years, we'll have seawater in our kitchen, and this is on one of the outer islands in Ha'apai. And one of the dangers with climate change is that in the grand scheme of the planet, it's slow. It's in the grand scheme of the planet, it's quick, but in the grand scheme of our lifetime, the danger is that it can creep just enough that it kind of stays off our radar. So in trying to understand human behavior, I'd ask myself this question, because I've worked in youth homeless shelters for many years. I asked myself this question: what inspires someone to change? And if we take an example of the average person, if I'm trying to help them not go and eat junk food, so we've got the existential thing. You may die early, but we've also the other area is the love. So there's two things that there's two things that inspire people: fear and love. So the existential threat is what should be coming down from policy. The planet's not going to be here. There's not going to be any animals, etc., etc., etc. But also, what I'm trying to do as well is inspire the love for planet. And I think a lot of the guests here are doing that as well. It has to be a two-pronged approach, because if we're just using just fear, then it's easy for people to actually turn off to that. I know that if I eat that, I probably won't make it past 60, but I'll eat it anyway. Live fast, die young, sort of thing. But if we can reach a point where we're actually showing people, inspiring them to love the planet, and that's what I do I try to do through my social media. I'm out there kayaking every day, just showing the beauty of the planet. And if we can use that along with the existential threat of no more human existence, because at the end of the day, the planet's going to win, whether we're on it or not. I mean, that's what it comes down to. But if we can also use love for planet as well as fear of there being no us anymore, I think that's the ultimate formula towards everyone getting on board.
Can I jump in? Because I agree with so much of what you're saying, Pita. I think that in my work, I really lean toward trying to find the silver lining or finding the one positive thing. And I got a lot of pushback because they're like, no, it has to be doom and gloom. And I really agree with you, human psychology, people shut down. And I think it's such a challenge to communicate this issue in a way where it makes people understand it, but then and grasp it, but then not just be like, well, that's too overwhelming. And so that's the constant line that I try to walk. And I don't know if I'm always successful at it, but I think that we need to have and keep examining how we tell these stories and how we get people to care. And like you said, I think getting people to connect with the planet and love the planet, then you're coming from a place of love versus maybe I'm directly quoting you now, Pita, instead of a place of fear. And also I always like the idea of being active. So for me, it's I like the idea that I can compost because I'm actively changing something and creating compost from my food scraps, and it's good for the climate, and then I have a finished product that's valuable, versus this idea of do less footprint, drive less, eat less, move less, which I think sometimes environmentalism gets put into this box of you have to be very restrictive in how you live your life. And I think that is something that we have to overcome and try to create more of a movement that you can be part of that makes your life bigger because you're connected to more, instead of, this fearsome, well, I'll just do less harm and not participate. I don't know if that resonates with anyone else, but I'm always trying to flip it, even in my own mind, so that I don't get overwhelmed and I want to stay in the movement.
Others?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Absolutely, Lucy. the idea, I just love that idea of we're all part of this, and it's exciting. Our life doesn't get worse by contributing. It actually grows. It gets better, not just individually, but also as a collective. And I think that's an inspiring, thing for people to think that our life will get better if we do this. How do we, as whether, using the word influencers or whatever that is, how do we show people that their life's going to get better? That's a question that I try to answer each and every day, and I try to put forward as much as possible.
Let me see if any of the others want to be on that, because it's such a beautiful point. I want to see if anybody else has other perspective on it. We do have I'm going to move to the next question shortly, so don't really have to, but if you do want to contribute, please jump in.
I just want to jump in and share from young people's perspective, the young people that we talk to, change making is difficult. It's super challenging. And especially for young people getting involved now, they understand that they're in the movement for the rest of their lives, right? So they can see themselves that they have to be pushing this fight forward. And sometimes it can feel daunting. And what I found really powerful speaking to young people is that those communities of social change and having those networks and having individuals who are operating different roles, not everyone can be on the front line all the time, right? Not everyone can be, on the front lines protesting at all times. We have to understand that every single person does play a role, and those roles help each other and synergize in order to see the change that we want to make. So I think what's really powerful about that statement is we have to recognize that every single person brings gifts to the climate movement, whether or not they're on the front page of the newspaper, right? There are legions of people who are behind the people that we see on the front page. And I think it's important for us to also validate, those are valid forms, and those are also contributing to the sustainability of the movement overall.
I take from Dustin that exactly resonates from the Middle East when it comes to climate change movement. You won't find a lot of headlines or social media activism, but you can see a lot of people on the forefront tackling the solutions on ground. And some great examples from Yemen and Syria was going through the worst of civil wars. I've been doing local-based action to sustain. That doesn't come on a front page of any newspaper, but that's our part of the movement. Those young people are trying to find solutions at that ground level, and that reality is something inspirational for a lot of people, and that's everyday reality in the Middle East.
I think kind of what Lucy was saying about how it really relates well to the game on idea of our talk today. And I heard a speaker when I was at a climate event, I don't even remember when, but she basically was saying that this is like the ultimate challenge to face human beings. And that if we can save our planet and save ourselves, that is like the most exciting thing that we could ever do. And then by doing that, we prove that we deserve this like beautiful earth that we inhabit, and we deserve to use these resources through our lives. And that like literally blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, this is so like, it is like an exciting thing to be a part of instead of, a scary thing to get involved in because all of a sudden you're feeling the weight of the world. And I really loved, that just reminded me of that. And I love the idea of being excited to take on the challenge and see if we can complete it, because I think we can.
These are beautiful thoughts, people. Thanks so much. To get to that future that we all envisage, and to reach that goal of deserving this beautiful planet, one thing we need to do is we need to reach our global climate goals. And according to the IPCC, when we're thinking about renewable energy, we need an annual investment of $2.4 trillion in the clean energy sector until year 2035 to get there. That's a vast amount of money. But for our third question for our panelists in Game On for Climate Action, I want to ask you this. We just heard $2.4 trillion a year invested into the clean energy sector, but the question's on your screen. In 2018, how much was invested globally in renewable power generation? Was it $289 billion, $753 billion, or $1.5 trillion? These are kind of silly amounts of money, right? I can't even imagine. I can't picture these amounts of money. They're just numbers. But if we know that we need 2.4 trillion, how much do you think was invested in 2018? Neeshad, I'm going to go with you first of all, because you hadn't had a question to yourself yet. I am going to invite other panelists to jump in with answers as well, because I think you've only got one right so far between you.
Well, I go with 289 billion because I heard from a recent EIU report that the funding wasn't appropriate and the countries have been faring away from the commitments.
Okay, so you've gone for 289 billion, which is about a tenth of what's needed. Panelists, any other answers here?
I want to say 1.5 trillion. I'm an optimist.
I was going to say the same thing. I was going to jump into the contrarian with Lucy.
I'm going with 753, just so that someone in the panelists gets it right.
Covering our bases, I'll also go with 753. I'm with you, Pita.
Okay, well, I'm glad to tell you that one of you is right. Actually, it was Neeshad. It's $189 billion, so that's a 10.
No.
Hold on to the optimism. We need that optimism.
Yeah,
we need that optimism.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But listen, Neeshad. No, sorry, Lucy. Go.
No, I was just going to say I was doing an episode around how banks are still investing like trillions of dollars in fossil fuel projects, and that number, the 1.5 trillion, to me was probably more about a fossil fuel number. Sadly, anyway, that's all.
Do we count like money that fossil fuel companies are like putting towards green energy?
I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it probably does include that. I mean, the truth is, Lucy, that what you said is right, that the amount invested in fossil fuels is still much more than renewable energy. And Neeshad, let's pick up that point, given that you're in Qatar, in the oil producing Gulf, and also, as you said already, one of the hottest regions on earth. It's great that you have a youth climate group there, but there's a disconnect between what the young people can achieve versus what the oil companies need to do, basically stop. How much are young people in Qatar leading on understanding and educating people on the critical need to switch to renewables, and how effective are they being in that area to begin with?
Well, I mean, that comes with education. Like Qatar invests a lot on education, and recently there's a huge, change of mindset from young people who want to join for higher education, from chemical and petroleum engineering to sustainability. 5 years back, Hamad bin Khalifa University started the master's and PhD in sustainability studies, and you would be surprised to see the number of students taking up those courses, and that's a great direction how the young people are thinking about the future of their country. Unlike, of course, the government investments are more into gas these days. Of course, they believe this is the most effective transitional fuel before you completely move into renewables. So there is a mindset in the young people. I mean, they're moving the opposite direction than how the governments and the corporates think here. So it's a positive thing. And Arab Youth Climate Movement and members we get every year joining to our movement. It's also promising stuff that young people think like rest of the world, only to see and push when they are into decision-making roles. They would definitely go for how renewables can be pushed alongside with the fossil fuels they are currently working on, because that's a foundation for their economic development here.
So my next question to you, and this is to all of you, panel, this is not a quiz question, is the call to action. Neeshad, let me start with you. What is it that you want people watching, the one thing, to know and to do?
Well, my call for action would be that try keep the form of activism in your country based on the region and culture and things that fits your country. No need to replicate something that happens elsewhere, because every country and region are different. And also the people's behavior to such issues of climate and environment issues are super different. So be mindful of the region and try to implement those projects and the sort of action that would resonate locally. Maybe an oil-rich country like Qatar, where building on education would be a great way that young people start thinking about sustainability from a different perspective. Unlike in the past, young people were all given scholarships to study petroleum engineering. Of course, that was the country's narrative back in the days. Now things have been changing. And also welcoming move when I was personally last year when Qatar announced $100 million for the Green Climate Fund last year. Is also a promising move from an oil-rich country. So I wouldn't be saying it's a greenwashing, But that would send a great critical message to young people in the country. Okay, why is my country funding 100 million for green funds? So that's a sort of a direction that would definitely help young people to start thinking, moving away from fossil fuel industries.
Okay. Eva, what about you? What's the one thing that you want people watching this to know and to do?
I would say the one thing that I think is super important is to keep accountability high. And so, that's going with yourself and your daily products and what you're consuming, but that's also past your circle of what seems like direct influence. And so I'm talking politicians, and I'm talking, businesses that you're supporting, because I think, individually, obviously we can do a ton, especially voting with our dollar and stuff. But at the end of the day, there are larger forces at work that are contributing at disproportionate levels. And as consumers and as voters, we can hold them accountable in a way that can really change that shift.
Great. Peter, I see you nodding. What about you? What's the one thing you want audiences to take away from this and do?
I mean, I'm on a panel of really smart people. So I'm sure there's a lot of things that they will bring up. One of the things which really interests me as well is we talk about the indigenous populations, and that's for thousands of years, the indigenous populations have looked after our planet. The problem we're having now is that we think of indigenous as being local, as being that's their home and we're all guests. But I would love for people to see themselves as being indigenous. We're all indigenous people. We're all here we're all in this together. Doesn't matter which side of the kayak gets the hole and who goes in first, we all go down together. So if there was one thing, it would be the question I ask myself every day: what can I do to make people want to love our planet more? And each person will have an individual love for different parts of our planet, whether it be trees or whales or beaches or whatever that looks like. And how do you evoke that emotion in people so that they're like, it's not even a question of doom. It's like, I just want a green space because it fills it releases the stress from my head and it fills my heart. So that's what I would like to put forward.
Okay, great. Lucy and Dustin, in the last couple of minutes, let's get a quick minute each from you on that last question.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, Pita. I think it's important for people to see themselves as part of the story. We aren't separate from nature. We might have done a lot of bad things to nature, but this is our home. And I think that people are very detached. And I think it's really important for people to start caring and understanding that, your presence, where you put your attention and what you focus on matters. And you don't have to just kind of dismiss it as something that's out of your control and someone else is going to take care of it. Even if you just start trying and you do it imperfectly, that will create a momentum and it will impact the people around you, and it can snowball and snowball and snowball. So I think, get connected to the movement and understand that you can be part of the solution too.
Awesome. And just quickly, I think to honor the power of storytelling, I think that's my biggest takeaway, to honor your own narrative and your own purpose and your own story as it connects with the climate movement. I think as soon as people can articulate their why and share that with their own personal networks, it's one, a personal influence tool to activate other people. But two, by connecting one's own advocacy with one's own narrative, it makes it more sustainable. You feel as though you're personally connected to the movement. And with that, I just feel as though the storytelling is how we're going to push this movement forward.
Well, panel, you've given some amazing narratives, some amazing stories, some amazing insights today. I'm really grateful to you and for everyone watching. We've heard the voices here of activists, advocates. That's what everyone is. That's what all you are too, because we know that we must all take action, both in the companies we work for, the products we buy, our general consumption, as well as how we vote and agitate for greater commitment at all levels of government and society. The game is on for climate action. It's a race we can all win together, but we don't have a moment to lose. I'd like to thank our amazing panel today for your thoughts. I'm Rajesh Mirchandani. Please do check out the UN Foundation site at unfoundation.org for more details on our work on climate, or follow us on this major social network. networks. Thank you all for taking part today. It's been really a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you all for watching. Remember, they're coming to us from the 4 different parts of our planet. It's our only planet, only home. We have a responsibility. We have to earn the right to look after it. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.